other platform speakers, my people here in Pleasantville, and my charming wife Hazel. I understand, ladies and gentlemen, that this country is run by a chief, Chief Kunumunu Igbaro. On Monday evening, I propose to change my name to Chief Wheelbarrow. That is to take Igbaro back to Tobago. But we spent enough time on the honorable gentleman in this election campaign. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased indeed to be able to address such a large and enthusiastic audience here in Pleasantville. As you know, this is the fourth audience that I'm addressing for the evening. And without a doubt, this is the best. This is the best. Large audiences are now common to the People's National Movement. Last night, I had a chance to address an audience in Shogunas. And it was one of the largest meetings that I have ever addressed in Shogunas. Just a few moments ago, I was privileged enough to address a meeting in Gasparillo. Very large and very enthusiastic. A couple nights ago, ladies and gentlemen, I addressed a meeting at Busy Corner in Siparia, which I am told is the largest attendance ever at Busy Corner. On Tuesday night, I spoke at Market Square in Tobago. Very large and very enthusiastic audience, which tells you that in Tobago too, people are going PNM in droves. Wherever you go in Trinidad and Tobago, people are turning to the PNM in a way that was never anticipated. People are turning to the PNM to such an extent that I feel extremely confident indeed that when the final ballot is cast and counted on Monday night, that this country will experience a new government for the next 5 years. And as I say that, I cast my mind back to December the 15th, 1986. It was on that night that I accepted what the electorate had said and made the statement which I am sure you will remember, Vox Populi Vox Dei, the voice of the people is the voice of God. Yes. And if it is that the population felt, notwithstanding what the PNM felt about itself, that the time had come to go into opposition, the PNM accepted that verdict gracefully. We demitted office. We got into opposition, ladies and gentlemen. No trouble whatsoever. We didn't rig any election. Repeat, we didn't rig any election. Went into opposition and began the slow, long and painful climb back to government. Yes. Many people asked me in early 1987 whether I was sure that I wanted to be leader of the People's National Movement. And my response was, ladies and gentlemen, that when I was practicing as a professional geologist, if a geological problem came up, I never ran from it. It might take me a little longer to solve it, or I might solve it a little quicker. I am a professional geologist.
Right. Well said,
If a professional banker, ladies and gentlemen, confronts a banking problem, he doesn't run from it. It is either more difficult or it is more easy. It takes him a longer or shorter time. He faces the problem and he solves it. As a professional politician, ladies and gentlemen, I did not run from the challenge of reorganizing the People's National Movement, as indeed I will not run. I will not run from the challenge of reorganizing Trinidad and Tobago. The pact, as you know, between the PNM, between myself and the people of Trinidad and Tobago goes like this: for better or for worse, in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. And so, if it is the wish of the people of Trinidad and Tobago that the PNM runs the government once again, and if it is the expressed wish of the people of Trinidad and Tobago that I lead that government, I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that I have made the necessary psychological and other preparations. I am ready to govern as soon as you give the word. But back to 1987.
You have it, boy.
When I looked at what faced us in 1987, it did in fact seem to be a very Herculean task. We'd lost an election for the first time. We lost it with an overwhelming defeat. The ruling party got twice as many votes as the PNM, and they got 33 of the 36 seats. People had run away from the PNM in droves. They had run away. And it was in that situation where many people felt that all was lost, that one accepted the responsibility of reorganizing the PNM and reorganizing the PNM along lines that were acceptable to the national community. And when, ladies and gentlemen, and when in February or March of 1987, we will amalgamate 6 constituencies together and meet at the Mokorapo Junior Secondary School, Senior Comprehensive School. We will amalgamate 6 constituencies together so that we can have an attendance of 60 people. People weren't coming out to hear the PNM in those years, but we did it. And we persevered. And our motto was, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there will I be. That was our motto. And we were speaking to any group larger than one. We were not prepared to speak to ourselves. Any group larger than one, and we spoke to groups, ladies and gentlemen. And we set about to provide this country with the best opposition that the country has ever seen. And I feel very proud today that there is a view among sections of this population that we have achieved the objective that we set for ourselves in that regard. I will never forget the debate on the drug report, when it was 3 of us in a parliament of 33, ladies and gentlemen, 3 of us, and we had them reeling, 33 of them. I will never forget the hard work that was involved in sitting in a session of parliament that lasted for 5 hours, and I spoke for 2.5 of those 5 hours 5 times. That was what it was. That was what was involved. It came about because I was a member of the cabinet with considerable cabinet experience, and the other members in the parliament at the time were, from that standpoint, relatively green, and therefore the mantle had to be carried. In the Senate, we were served very ably by 6 senators, and we set about as a group of 9 people all over the country. We will go on a Saturday evening, we will go during the week, we will talk to people in the party, we will talk to people outside of the party, and in fact, that kind of consultation and dialogue has not stopped. We have been carrying it on up until this election campaign, where within the recent past, we have been addressing some of the major corporations in the country and giving them what we describe as a letter of comfort, to the extent that they have a political point of view that is different from ours. We say to them that we are not the villains of the peace, we are not the dragons, and that they have nothing to fear from the return of the PNM to office. That was the message.
Yes, well said.
That was the message. Organizationally in the PNM, it was clear that the PNM was no longer attractive to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. There are those among us who are of the view that the population was ungrateful. I am not of that view at all. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, there are those among us who also feel that the PNM's loss of power in 1986 was a blessing in disguise. I fail to see the disguise. I am prepared to say that it was a blessing because, in fact, now that we are coming back reorganized, revitalized, and in a much better position to discharge our responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We wondered if something had gone wrong with the philosophy of the party. We looked at it. When we looked at that philosophy, we realized that the philosophy was just as relevant in 1987 as it was in 1986, and therefore we confirmed our belief in that philosophy. We looked, ladies and gentlemen, at the vision that the party had set for the country, recognizing that one vision had already been substantially achieved and was replaced by another in 1970. On the occasion of the PNM going into opposition for the first time, we enunciated a new vision, the combination of vision and philosophy, forming the backdrop against which we embarked on another major exercise, that is to say, the exercise of reviewing policies over the entire range of governmental activity, confirming our belief in those policies that had worked, policies that still had a reasonable chance of working, adjusting those policies, ladies and gentlemen, that were not as successful as we would have liked them to be, and replacing those policies which had failed or which were no longer relevant by policies that had the objective and stood a good chance of taking a modern and progressive Trinidad and Tobago in the world of the 90s and beyond. We also recognize that a committed civil service is necessary towards the success of any policies that a government may wish to implement. Our position has always been, as we have conducted our policy review exercise, that we will not completely finalize our policy positions until the civil servants have a chance to express a point of view on the directions that we are taking. So that as we get into government with your help, ladies and gentlemen, and with the help of the Almighty God, one of the first things that we will do will be to consult the relevant public servants on the policy positions, give them an involvement in the final decision, and therefore elicit their commitment to any positions that are adopted. And as we seek to implement, you can be assured, and reasonably assured, ladies and gentlemen, that the civil service will be at one with the positions adopted by the political directorate. Strategy. It is not our intention, ladies and gentlemen, to disrupt the administration. We are not going to come into office and say that this one was NAR and therefore he must go, and this one was PNM and therefore he must stay. That is the attitude that you now see on the lit projects, where, ladies and gentlemen, to get a job on that project, you must show a party card, you must buy a $10 jersey for $50, and if they only suspect that you know somebody who might be PNM, no work for you. In other words, if you have an NAR affiliation, your children must live. And if you have a PNM affiliation, your children must starve. That's what's happening now. None of that for the PNM, ladies and gentlemen. It is not our concern how people voted. At any rate, nobody here is able to say how anybody would have voted. When you go into a polling station and you get in a ballot booth, you meet two people beside yourself. You meet your conscience and you meet the Almighty God, ladies and gentlemen. That nobody else has any way of knowing how your ballot is cast. And therefore, it is not for us to assume who voted for and who voted against. The PNM recognizes and is conscious of the fact that when an election is over, the responsibility of a government is not just to those who voted for you, but your responsibility is to the national community. That's how the PNM will pursue. As we reorganized the party, one of the things that concerned us was the accusation that by 1986, the PNM had become a political party that was looking after the interests of only one section of the population, the racial question, ladies and gentlemen. We have addressed it. We have addressed the question. We never took the view that those who expressed that point of view were right or wrong. That's not for us. If it is a perception in the national community, then our responsibility is to address it, and we did that. Having addressed it, ladies and gentlemen, and having gone out of our way to create an atmosphere in the PNM in which everybody feels welcome and comfortable, the stage was set for the reorganization of the party, and today, the PNM that faces the electorate is a party that more closely reflects the composition of the society in which we live. A party very different in that respect from the political party that was defeated on the 15th of December, 1986. I am proud of that. I am proud of that, ladies and gentlemen, and the legacy that I would wish to leave the people of Trinidad and Tobago when in due course I step down or am removed is a well-balanced and well-organized people's national movement, a vehicle for the continued development and progress of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So that as we have achieved a balance within the party, while we still have some distance to go, it is essentially achieved. We have a commitment, and a commitment is being made by the PNM to govern the country in a balanced manner. Has to be balanced. Has to be balanced development. Never underestimate, ladies and gentlemen, the significance and the dangers that face this country as a result of the failure of one love. Do not underestimate it. It has the potential to fragment this country to such an extent that civil war could be the result. Already in the election campaign for 1991, already we are seeing the return to racial politics in a way that we never anticipated. And it is being propagated by persons in the society who should have been exemplars and who should recognize that it is country before self, it is country before party, and that you do not appeal to the banal instincts of our population in your attempt, ladies and gentlemen, to seek and gain political power. We believe, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that a very delicate situation exists. Very delicate situation exists. And therefore, the PNM has made the commitment before, and I wish to make it here to you in Pleasantville again tonight, that there is going to be balanced development of the country under the People's National Movement. That is to say, ladies and gentlemen, that as you take a decision to extend, as the PNM has done in its manifesto, the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway to dual the highway up to Wallerfield, you also take a decision to extend the Solomon-Hochoy Highway, the Uriah Butler Highway, to Point Fortin. And you also take a decision, ladies and gentlemen, to upgrade some of the major arterials in rural Trinidad so that the development is balanced. That as you take a decision, ladies and gentlemen, to spend money on minor roads in the country, you also take a decision to spend money on agricultural access roads, which is responsible for the livelihood of a significant section of our people. And that's how you go. It is balanced development, PNM style. That is how we're going. We also believe, ladies and gentlemen, that the question of race is a very delicate one. It is so delicate that something else has to be done. That a mechanism has to be found whereby this thing is dispassionately studied. Whenever people talk race, emotions run high. And few people are able to distinguish between fact and fiction on the racial issue. We must be able to discuss that dispassionately, but since we can't, since so many of us cannot, the PNM says, let it be investigated dispassionately by a group of people who are seen to be non-partisan. The PNM, on the basis of our performance, I am coming to you once again. I'm coming to you, ladies and gentlemen, to make my services available to you if it is your wish. on this occasion with a little difference. That when you cast your ballot on Liberation Day, Monday, December the 16th, you will not just be electing a parliamentary representative, but you'll be electing the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And so I thank you for your support. I thank you for your forbearance in the election campaign. I thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. The ruling party has now resorted to buying votes as of yesterday at the rate of $20 per vote. By the time Sunday comes, they might reach 100. My advice to you is to take every penny you could get. For many of you, it is the only thing that you might ever get from them. Take it, ladies and gentlemen, but go to the polls on Monday and do what you know you have to do. Look at your children before you leave home. And before you put your finger in the ink, you must say to your child, this one is for you. Go to the polls, ladies and gentlemen. I ask you for your support. If you live in San Fernando East, I ask you to vote for me, please. If you live in San Fernando West, I ask you to vote for Ralph Maraj. But wherever you live, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to vote for the PNM. And I ask you to vote for caring in government and putting Trinidad and Tobago back in the caring, benevolent hands of the People's National Movement. I thank you, and may God bless you all.